everybody. Welcome to Idio Talk, a Radiohead podcast. I am your host, Walker Glenn.
And I am Zach Glenn.
How you doing, Zach?
I'm great.
Happy New Year, by the way. We're a couple weeks into it.
I know, 2023.
How's it treating you so far?
Good. I've been waiting my whole life for a year to end in my favorite basketball player's number of all time. So.
Oh, sure, LeBron James.
Yes, and Michael Jordan.
And Draymond Green.
Draymond Green.
Who are the other people who have had the audacity to take number 23?
No one comes to mind. I mean, those would be two of the most prominent active players.
It's funny that Draymond Green has it. Not that I'm a big fan of Draymond Green, but it makes more sense for LeBron James to put himself in the canon of Michael Jordan than it does, like a great defensive player like Draymond Green is.
Well, and a very unselfish player, because Draymond's whole thing is I think he can score, but chooses to facilitate, which is not Michael Jordan's game plan.
He can score, but it's not his strong suit.
No.
When we went to a Warriors game last year, he hit a 3-pointer. We were all laughing about he looks so strange when he shoots a 3. He has like the oddest form.
Puts his butt out a lot.
Oh, you know what? I know what it is. He has number 23 because, like Michael Jordan, he will beat the shit out of his teammates.
Yeah, I don't think it's as is sacrosanct? I don't think sacrosanct is the correct word.
That is.
Yeah, I don't think it holds. Not that players active in this era don't respect or understand the legacy that is Michael Jordan. I don't think he's like in the Kareem camp yet, where he was one of the greatest all time, but most folks weren't alive or anything to enjoy his greatness. I do think though that it's more okay for folks to adopt that number, provided it isn't retired. And funny thing about his number being retired, the Chicago Bulls obviously have retired Michael Jordan's number, and there was this movement after Jordan retired the second time, so in 1999, 98, 99, where the entire NBA was going to retire his number.
Whoa. And
the Miami Heat jumped on that train early. And so, but no other teams did it because it wasn't mandated. It wasn't required. The league was talking about doing that.
And the Miami Heat retired it?
Yes. And so the Chicago Bulls and Miami Heat are the only teams that have number 23 retired in honor of Michael Jordan.
Okay, so LeBron wasn't 23 when he played on the Heat?
No, he was number 6. And he's also number 6. He may have gone back to 23 now. I do believe he's number 6 on the Lakers as well, though.
Oh, no shit. Okay.
Yeah.
But I'm not tripping completely. He has been number 23.
No, you're right. Yeah.
On the Cavaliers? But not on the Lakers.
But not on the Lakers or the Heat. Yeah.
Interesting. I do think it makes sense for the Bulls to retire it, because I'm just like,
of course.
But it would be funny if like Alex Caruso or something, when he started playing for the Bulls, is like, I'm 23.
Can you unretire?
I'm the white Michael Jordan. And by that, I mean, I also have a terrible hairline.
Wait, Michael Jordan doesn't have a terrible hairline.
Well, he shaved it, buddy. But,
he did.
But I'm big on this is one of my sticky wickets, so to speak, is that Michael Jordan we don't think of as bald because he has shaved his head for so long, and it's such an iconic look for him. But if you see pictures of him,
his first 2 years in the league,
yes, but and that's when you could see it's like receding a little bit. But there's a picture of him where his hair is, I think it's after he started shaving and his hair is growing out a little bit, and you're like, oh, this motherfucker is bald. So I think that this is a big question I have, and this actually goes out to any of our listeners
and members of Radiohead, i.e. Phil.
Yes, exactly. I'm very curious about if there are not bald people who make the choice to bick their head. Now,
very rare.
I used to think that this was a thing in the black community. I'm not trying to be funny. It's just like, I was like, oh, when I picture like shaved bald, that seems like it's like a look that you see more on black men than white men.
Interesting.
But now that I'm bald,
right,
and I shave my head, I'm like pretty convinced nobody would rather do this than have hair if they have halfway decent hair.
Remember the Seinfeld episode where she's dating the swimmer and he shaves his head for like agility and speed in the water to be more aerodynamic, and she finds out it's the actor from Best in Show who's with Michael McKean, the more flamboyant of the two.
Oh yes, I never know his name, but he's such a funny actor.
Such a great actor.
Yeah.
He's a character actor in comedies mostly. But yeah, that actor does have a gorgeous head of hair, and this is mid 90s.
Oh, I do remember this now that you stated it's him.
Elaine's dating him, and she finds out not only could he grow hair, but it's like a beautiful, gorgeous head of hair. But then he starts letting it grow out for it, and he's realized in the interim that he's gone bald.
The actor that you were referring to is John Michael Higgins.
Yeah,
he's
great. He's a great
Very
actor.
funny guy. But yeah, so I mean, it's really great to be back with our listeners, and we are a few weeks into 2023 now.
Mm-hmm.
Have you kept or abandoned any New Year's resolutions?
No, I have not abandoned any. I'm not big on resolutions, never have been, but I do still recognize the value of kind of, entering into the new year, even though it is kind of, it's a human construct or whatever, that we live by these rigorous seasons and the holiday hangover and all that. I do think it just represents like this period of rebirth. So I've been walking more daily, trying to get in 2 walks per day, getting some quality time with the wife and just getting in a little bit of exercise.
Bruce Lee said walking is the god of all exercises.
Oh, okay. Interesting.
Yeah, that's
I was not aware of that.
I'm surprised you're so into Bruce Lee when we were young.
Yeah, well, I love Bruce Lee.
So walking more quality time with family. I mean, we could say our name now. The fans know Kailani Glenn and the cats. Your beautiful, cozy little family you got going over there.
They don't go on walks with us.
No, we
did get them a harness though for outside time, so we could expose them to outdoors.
Oh no,
I know it's. Wasn't trying to tell folks, but the platform in which I could possibly broadcast my voice the most to folks. Now I've done that. This was an idea from the wife, and it's so funny. What we were talking about this off mic just a second ago with you putting the Santa hat on your wonderful dog, but I really think that cats respond even more confused when you put any article of clothing on them than dogs.
Yeah, they're naturalists.
Yeah. So, but no, they're not coming on walks with us. But
I know also though that is the more responsible cat owner thing to do is let them do outside time harness, not just for their own safety, but after I know a podcast you're a big fan of is Stuff You Should Know, and I found that our Cat's an Invasive Species
so interesting
episode so interesting, but it's like cats like decimate entire ecosystems just based on the birds they kill.
Yeah, over 80 unique species of birds have been single-handedly destroyed.
That is so amazing. I mean, wow. Like it's like so like eco footprint on the world is like humans, cats. That's so amazing. And then like third is cow flatulence somewhere. And it's not close.
No.
But I do have to say, in the spirit of just, lightly making fun of you, when I see somebody with a cat on a harness, every time it is just like, this is for you.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
The cat,
No, I totally
does
agree.
not wish that you were walking around the lake right now.
Well, yes, our cats though do long for the outdoors, so it is straddling that line of trying to give them a little bit of variety in their life, but also not allowing them to get into fights with other cats. And our animals are all spayed and neutered, but still. What about you? I'm curious about you.
You know what? I kind of go the other way with it as a bit of a contrarian. So we're 3 weeks into January. I have started smoking and gained 50 pounds. I just don't want to go this. I like to zag.
Raging bull status.
Yeah, exactly.
Raging bull status.
Yeah, I'm putting weight on and off as if it's for an Oscar-worthy role, but it's just for my life.
Right. Totally.
I saw that on Twitter the other day. Some like fitness freak. It was like some personal trainer, and the guy was like, I gained 70 pounds to be able to empathize with like my overweight clients, and it shows him like ripped and then overweight and then ripped again.
Not
I'm
the
just like,
experience of an overweight person.
no,
Typically.
not at all. Yeah, I gained
Christian
70
Bale
pounds.
maybe can relate to you.
Sure. Yeah, it's totally just like, what are you complaining about, fatties? I gained 70 pounds to show you how easy it is to lose it if you hate yourself. And it's just like,
That's
this
really
cannot be
insensitive.
good for you.
No, it's not good for you, and that's really insensitive to people that, you know, I don't want to wade too far into this territory, but it's typically not. It's usually a battle that lasts for a sustained period of time. Not
right.
Like, oh God.
Yeah. That's why I only do the part where I gain weight. Because I stand in solidarity with people of size. So I'm really happy to be back in the driver's seat of the pod. It's been a long few weeks. Nice
Back
to
in
have
the
a
bunker.
break. Back in the bunker. Who's in the bunker? We are.
Yep.
Have you like had any podcast correspondence with any of the listeners or anything in the time that we've been off?
Yes, and I'm so glad you asked because I was so excited to tell you about this. So, a listener of the show, well, actually, I could say because I asked this listener if I had permission to use this as content and give out their social security number, banking information. And
Yeah,
so forth.
we'll put that in the show notes.
Yeah, we don't want listeners to lose that. Our babysitter has been really supportive of the show. Another unsolicited listener.
Now, you should say this is not a person who currently babysits us.
No.
This is somebody who babysat us as wee children.
Yes.
When we didn't even know who Radiohead were.
Yes, thank you for that clarification. Fan of
They
the
were
band.
probably still on a Friday at the point that we were getting babysat by this person.
Yeah, we'll follow up on that.
Maybe Creep had just come.
Yeah, I think that sounds more. But really supportive listener of the show. I did not remember this person actually.
Okay. I do.
Yes, and I do now too, based on the memory that they that she used to remind us of babysitting us. But it was a very dim memory, but really, really nice lady nonetheless. And
what is she? Probably like 3 years older than me. Like, I mean, you know what I mean? I genuinely don't know.
I'm thinking that too.
But it's like, I feel like it's like this person babysat us and we are all the same age now.
I know. That's so funny. Different time, the early 90s.
Yeah.
You could hire children to watch your children.
You know how to press 3 buttons on this touch tone phone, don't you?
Yeah.
All right.
So anyways, can't
We'll
emphasize
see you in a
enough
couple days.
just what a nice and supportive listener this person has been. And also very very busy, you know, a mom and going to school. So her and I have gotten to engage about all kinds of stuff. She's going to school where I went to school in Chico, California.
Okay.
And so understandably, she's not able to listen to each 3-hour episode as it comes out. And so she sent us an email just expressing how much she enjoyed our Amnesiac episode. And I don't want to linger on this too long, but for those who may or may not have listened, if you're just jumping in because In Rainbows is your favorite episode, Walker and I go on a long diatribe prior to starting the album about an urban legend. Yeah, a family urban legend. Or so we thought.
Right.
About a surfboard severing a man's arm that was attached to a truck traveling in the opposite direction. And it was really meant to kind of warn Walker and I of the dangers of enjoying the cool weather
of
outside
relaxing.
the vehicle. Yes. And she just said, so crazy. My mom issued the same ominous warning. Are you sure that that's an urban legend just unique to your family?
That is so nuts. So we're not related to this person
No,
at
not at all.
And it is also, she's receiving the same warning.
Yes.
So that's crazy because what I feel like is this cold case has become hot. Like,
well, she did add the detail that it wasn't a surfboard.
What was it in her case?
I don't know. It was just that, like, if you stick your arm out the window, it'll become severed by a truck traveling in the opposing direction.
Gotcha. Okay, so this is becoming clearer. I am now starting to think there is a seed of truth.
Right.
And that what's going on is that there was, in the early 90s, there must have been a highly publicized accident of somebody's arm being severed during an accident while driving with their arm out of the window.
Yes.
And then each family, to scare their children, just fills in their own details.
Yeah.
And Papa, our grandpa, who this originated from in our family, he's probably
supposedly. I never heard him tell the tale, though.
That's true.
It was passed down through mom, and I have developed a theory on the origin of this. Think back real hard. What was going on in the early to mid 90s in regards to severing of appendages and windows? Lorena Babbitt. She just cut it, tossed it out a window.
Sure.
Irreplaceable appendage.
Yeah, which that is a better warning to give your children is don't be an abusive creep who to your spouse for years on end, because eventually they will take street justice into their own hands and remove your genitalia. That's the part of that story that I feel like got kind of lost, and this is not a funny thing to dwell on.
What a horrible...
Yeah, I didn't know until I was older that he was a complete monster.
Yeah, absolutely.
And that this was really
Don't feel bad for him.
No, not at all.
Listeners, if you could see my face, it has gone from joking to completely serious.
So, okay, so you think that it's like our parental figures, the authority figures in our lives, grandparents, aunts, mom, dad, they're like, okay, this Lorena Bobbitt situation is a teachable moment, but the details are a little bit X-rated for our children. What we're gonna do is say that it was an arm and that it was a surfboard.
Yeah.
Okay, I like that.
I think urban legends were like were maybe a little bit harder to debunk and had a little bit more of a long-lasting ruminants in the zeitgeist, even
Absolutely.
in our lifetime, because now everybody's into debunking, via Facebook, Reddit, what have you.
Right.
Now everyone's more into being right now.
Right. And wronger than they've ever been.
No shit.
Everybody has more conviction about not knowing shit than at any time in history. Well, I think that that's an interesting theory. But I also am kind of thinking that the surfboard detail could have come from Papa himself, just because it's like, okay, it's the 90s. Papa is an older man already at this point. And if he's like filling in this story with details of things that he wants to warn his children off of, what's like something that to him is like, this is like a new countercultural
Jackasses
thing.
and clowns would be doing.
Yeah, exactly. And it's like, he's just probably like thinking back to the last time he was in his 30s, and it's like the 1960s. And it's like, what are all these dope heads doing on surfboards everywhere? And so he's like, you know what? I'll plug that in. Yeah. And then it's like, don't stick your arm out the window. Also, stay away from surfboards. It's a bad culture. Wow. Well, listeners, I think that this is a call to action out to our listeners, is you need to let us know if you have heard any variation on this story in your life. And I would like the internet sleuths out there to get to the bottom of this.
Yeah. Call to action.
Call to action.
Walker and I are very busy going on walks and gaining weight and smoking.
Yeah. Zach would do this, but he's got cat harnesses in each hand. He can't possibly sit down at a computer and type. No, go down. I want this to be like a third act of a thriller, going to the public library, sitting down in front of the microfiche
doing the
machine.
thing.
Yeah. Enhance, and then you enhance on a newspaper picture of a guy with a bloody stump, and then way in the background somewhere you see a surfboard, and the surfboard is actually the detail that the government has been trying to cover up, because
Hitler's standing next to it.
Yeah, exactly.
Still alive.
Holding the day's newspaper. It's like this crime happened in Argentina where a bunch of the Nazis escaped to.
The date that it happened was October 10th, 2007.
Oh, Zach. What? We might as well get into it. Did something happen on October 10th, 2007? Perhaps something germane to this podcast?
Let me just go to my notes. Oh, my gosh. Well, that could have been a coincidence. But yes, a pinnacle album by the band
Muse.
Yeah, exactly. Was released on October 10th, 2007. And that would be the album that we are discussing today, Walker, In Rainbows.
Oh, man, I am so excited to talk about this one. It's been a long time coming. We've delayed the gratification a few times. Should we get into some of the just the facts and figures about this album?
I would love to.
Why don't you kick us off?
So Radiohead's In Rainbows. It's their 7th studio album.
No, back up.
I'm sorry.
Radiohead.
Sure.
Who are they? Just kidding. Radiohead is an English rock and roll combination.
Yeah, well, I would say our last album tangentially connected was, though, The Eraser by Tom York.
Yes.
This is a full band album. That's why it's Radiohead.
Yeah,
did it.
Not Tom York.
Not Tom York.
Not Phil Selwyn.
Led by principal lyricist and singer Tom York.
Correct. Tom with a H.
Tom with a H. Johnny Greenwood, we got rocking on lead guitar.
And everything else.
And everything else. Supporting the rhythm section, we have brother of Johnny Greenwood, Colin.
Yep.
And on the drums, we have Phil Selway.
Phil Selway with the fills.
Mm-hmm. And then take us home, Walker.
Well, and then just, in kind of an emotionally supportive role, we have the handsome man, Ed O'Brien.
Exactly.
He's standing there cheering his mates on. Hey, what a good band this is. Would love to take part in it at some point.
And he does take a lot of parts in a lot of the compositions on this wonderful album, which was recorded. These are loose, but the recorded dates that they recorded this is February 2005 through June 2007. So right down to the wire. The studios that they recorded, they bounced around a little bit, but primary was Hoswell House.
I got to push back on you slightly.
Oh, please.
I believe that the earliest sessions were in February of 2006.
Okay.
Now, some of these songs were kicking around in some live versions and rehearsals and things like that, but Radiohead was still on hiatus in 2005, according to the things I read. So actually, the first public declaration of Radiohead being in rehearsals for a new album came from Tom in the beginning of February 2006. And when we get into these sessions in a little more detail, I have something I saved from his online diary that he was keeping at the time when he was reporting to fans about what the band was up to.
Got it. And I think that makes sense. And I think why I do want to cite my sources here early on because I don't want to do it throughout. But in addition to, I think Wikipedia might say back to 2005 in this book that I've mentioned almost every episode, This Isn't Happening, Radiohead in the 21st Century. It's a book about Kid A, but In Rainbows is covered extensively. I think in addition to what you were saying about the songs kicking around, maybe a live performance or two, I'm not sure, correct me if I'm wrong on that. I think it's fair to say that maybe it does go back some of it in idea form, maybe to 2005. But
absolutely.
But yeah, we definitely want to get that correct, and we really want to get things right on this episode because this is just such a pinnacle album.
And the lines are more blurred, I think, with other periods. But Radiohead returned from an indefinite hiatus to begin the sessions for this album.
Yeah, a 9-month hiatus. So
yeah.
We'll get into that in a second. But the length of this album is 42 minutes, 39 seconds.
Keeping it tight.
Keeping it tight, but I just even, thinking about Kid A, putting Hail the Thief to the side because not to the side actually, because Hail the Thief is 56:35.
Mm-hmm.
So, clearly a little bit tighter, like you said. But that does not come through when I listen to In Rainbows. It's always a breath of fresh air, but man, there's so much substance to it in that 42 minutes. The label, it was self-released. We'll get more into that in a minute. XL is also listed as like a co-sponsor in a way.
Yeah, the Radiohead owned the masters and was at the time considered the world's biggest unsigned band.
Yeah, I saw that quote.
They were free from their contract with EMI. XL Recordings put out the physical release.
Yeah.
But Radiohead, for the first time, owned all the music that they made and released it independently. The release of this album is obviously a story in itself, and we'll get more into that.
And I believe you said on our the Eraser episode that XL Recordings is one of Britain's largest independent labels.
Yeah,
right?
it seems like kind of like it's like there's like Sub Pop Records.
Yeah.
It's like a lot of big acts that you've heard of, but it's like an indie label.
Yeah. Producer, listeners might laugh, Walker might laugh, but Nigel Godrich and Radiohead, that is pertinent though to the discussion. We'll get into the production a little bit later. After that I just have the tracks listed, but as we just discussed, there's 10 tracks on this very, very tight album. There is a disc 2. I don't want to get too much into that right now with some additional recordings. But when you look at just the album, Radiohead and Rainbows, it's 10 tracks at 42 minutes.
They completed the sessions with 16 tracks and then cut that down to 10.
Yeah. Which, there's how many on Hail to the Thief? 14?
Yes.
So a clear departure. Now, I do have a little bit more on the general background pertaining to the recording of this album. Is it okay if I continue with that?
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay. So, like you were just mentioning, in 2004, after finishing their world tour for their 6th studio album, Hail to the Thief, Radiohead entered a declared hiatus, and this lasted 9 months. Hail to the Thief was the final album released under their record contract with EMI, and they now had no contractual obligation to release new material. And according to the New York Times, I think Walker just gestured at this quote, in 2006, Radiohead were by far the world's largest / most popular unsigned band. A quote from Phil Selway, not exact, this paraphrase, but he said, "We still have a desire to make music, but we'll focus on other things as well." So just going to talk about that break in a little bit more detail. In the spring of 2004, Radiohead completed their Hail to the Thief tour, which culminated in them headlining Coachella. And I saw a quote from Tom, too, because I believe they went Asia, Australia, and then back to Coachella. So Tom said that they basically did the order of that tour backwards in terms of like what time zone they're used to, right? Mm-hmm. Which would be in the United Kingdom. So it really was just a prolonged period of very, very minimal sleep for every member of the band. Tons of exhaustion. We talked about how quickly they recorded that album, and then to go on such a large world tour, really, really draining.
Yes, going on tour, a activity that I speculate Radiohead does not enjoy.
Yeah. Yes. And just a little bit of background on the members, we're going to talk about this as we explore the vibes and the themes of the album or what we hear in the writing, etc. But it was the end of of their 30s for each member of the band. There is an age range of about 4 to 5 years. In Radiohead, I believe Colin and Phil are the 2 eldest. Tom, it's just interesting, right? We've reached this point where Walker and I are both in our 30s, and I really find this to be a little bit more of a relatable period. But I don't want to go too far into that, but just that's to say that each member of Radiohead had at least 2 children, mm-hmm. and were either married or entrenched in a very long-term relationship.
Yeah, I did see it come up a lot in the interviews I read that it was like very hard for them to get back to work, all being mm-hmm. new dads.
Yeah.
And I can definitely attest to the fact that being a dad, having a job, and a hobby, mm-hmm. Say goodbye to everything else. For me, the thing to go has been outside friendships or relationships of any kind. Zach is now my only friend, and this is the only time we talk. So I can understand why being in Radiohead it'd be hard to find the time at this point.
Yeah, absolutely. And I mean, just talking a little bit more about just kind of high level overview, from a production point of view and just the length of this in December 2005, Radiohead, had been kicking around these ideas, specifically the songs Body Snatchers, Nude, We're Fishes, they had been working on, and they brought in producer Mark Spike Stent. And this was again in December of 2005.
Can we back up a little bit?
Of course, yeah.
Yeah, so they do bring him in relatively quickly, but I think it's worth noting that they actually bring him in after they've already tried to start sessions on their own.
Yeah.
And just can't really get it popping. So they're they have no label, no deadline, and no producer, and the word is from the band that the sessions began very slow and mm-hmm. frustrating.
Yeah.
And so then they bring in Spike Stent.
Yeah, and he did eventually exit the project. I know the artists that he's worked with, all 3 of them, and I like a good portion of their music. I'm really grateful though that he gave them the feedback that the songs weren't done. They just weren't there yet. He did eventually exit the project. They did eventually reconvene with Nigel Godrich. I do believe part of the reason that Nigel was unavailable was because he was recording the 2006 album, which tracks with the timeline, right? The Information with Beck.
Okay.
Which is that is my personal favorite Beck Nigel Godrich collaboration. It's a very, very underrated album. Listeners, check it out.
Can we drill down on the exit of Spike and the entrance of Nigel a little bit?
Yeah, because that's pretty much the last little bit I wanted to cover before Pay What You Want. So please go ahead.
Oh, yeah, sure. Okay. Well, I think there's some more interesting details about the sessions themselves.
Yeah.
So it is just interesting, like you said, for them to bring in Spike. And I'm not being funny here. I am pretty curious what the thinking was there. And it is also curious that them bringing in a new producer is following what is one of their most divisive albums.
With said producer too.
Yeah, exactly. So I am curious if there was a little bit of, trouble at home between Nigel and the boys at this point.
But meanwhile, though, Tom is working with Nigel, though.
That's true.
So I wondered the same thing.
That's true. But in any case, they bring in Spike Stent, whose resume is massive. I was looking at the stuff he has produced, and it's a lot of pop, which is really interesting that Radiohead was drawn to this guy. He's worked with the Spice Girls, Madonna several times, Gwen Stefani several times, Beyonce, and then stuff that is also that feels more connected to Radiohead. He's worked with U2, Arcade Fire, Bjork. But it is interesting to me that they were thinking of going in that direction, and I'm ultimately glad that they went back with Nigel. Everybody in the band is pretty classy, so there's not anything about what happened. The word that I found over and over was that the sessions with Spike Stent proved fruitless. That was the word that came up in everything I read.
Yeah, and
nobody said anything else.
I don't want to be reductive to Spike or to U2, but I'm so glad that he exited the project, because one of the things that U2, specifically guitar player The Edge, does that I'm a huge fan of in Joshua Tree and in a lot of their albums, but The Edge has such a distinctive sound in the way he uses delay. And I don't hear a lot of delay in Johnny Greenwood's playing and in Tom York's playing. I hear a lot of direct, right? You know what I'm saying? I mean, Edge has such a distinctive sound, and I don't mean to chalk that up to the producer, but I feel like that is what Edge brings, and he knows when to deploy it. When guitar players try to replicate that, and I'm thinking of Muse here, definitely not, I don't think, in the same artistic caliber as Radiohead. It's obviously subjective, but they have, I think, tried to emulate U2's sound. And it just doesn't work when other bands do it. And hearing a Radiohead album at this later stage in their career that would imitate U2 would be very painful. And I wonder if that could have been a possible outcome.
Yeah.
I don't know. I don't want to linger on it too long, but...
Well, so I pulled up the quote from Tom's blog post that he did in early February of 2006. And this is when they were still working with Spike Stent. So here we are with Spike Stent in our studio, which now looks like NASA, and we are being taken to task. We're having to shake the dust off. No more bullshit. Stop answering the phones and thinking of excuses to leave the building. Instead, get on with it. And then he goes on to say, very Tom York, of course there are other distractions. Sitting in the garden with your 12-bore shotgun, large orchestras doing drum machine noises, getting suits made, puppies, canal boats, beer, modular synthesizers, Lego, tax investigations, global warming, and the end of life as we know it, traffic, deafness, insanity, normality, whatever.
Wow. I was not familiar with that quote. I love it. You're so right on. That's such a Tom quote, because
it sounds like he was reading the B-sides from the Hail to the Thief album cover.
Absolutely. It speaks to the thing that I think we both love about Tom, and I do want to talk about this when we get into the lyrical content of this album, but that speaks to a lot of the cynicism about the grandiosity and minutia of life, right? He's kind of wrapping them all in one. I love that. Beer and what was one of the other things he mentioned that would be a huge thing. He kind of has a yin yang there, and I just love it.
Yeah,
I love. And I saw
end of the planet.
Yeah, exactly. I saw another quote from Tom too during this period. Can't pinpoint the date exactly, but where he said it's all shite. So not a lot of optimism coming out of the Radiohead camp, and specifically Tom, who was broadcasting sort of the experience of recording this album more so than ever before. We don't have Ed doing the online diary like we did in Kid A. We have Tom really kind of narrating with a lot of negativity. And not throwing his mates under the bus per se, but you kind of can't help but wonder, like, oh, was Colin, Ed, Phil, Johnny really bugging him that day?
Yeah.
I don't know.
He's a grumpy guy.
He is, yeah. And I just so like we were saying, different producer, did bring Nigel back on. Obviously a great decision. I don't know if you want to expound upon that.
Well, I just, like I said, I'm curious what happened there, and if they haven't dished on it now, it's unlikely they ever will. But what he said there, that our studio now looks like NASA, it just kind of makes me wonder if after Hail to the Thief, the group consensus was, hey, we love Nigel and Nigel's great, but we obviously need some sort of new challenge. And we need somebody with a different method of working to get us in shape. And then doing that just led them to go like, oh, we
do love Nigel.
We do love Nigel. And we didn't know. It's kind of like in, the song, If You Like Pina Coladas.
Yeah.
How it's about two different people are responding to a personals ad to cheat on their spouse.
No, I did not know that. No.
That is what it's about. So it's a personals ad that somebody has placed. And then when they meet the person that they went to cheat with from the personals ad, it is their spouse.
Wow.
And they rediscover, oh, we both like pina coladas and getting caught in the rain. The magic was here all along.
Yeah. Hey, you want to make love at midnight?
Exactly. Yeah. Why does it have to be exactly at midnight? Not at 11:59, not at 12:01.
If you like scheduling a lay down.
Now, I do wonder, of course, again, the band is classy. Nigel's classy. I couldn't find any shit talking from any camp about these ill-fated sessions with Spike Stent.
Yeah.
But I do love picturing when they decided to go back to Nigel, just him, well. You know what I keep picturing is in Clockwork Orange.
Hang on, let me put Paul McCartney on hold.
Yeah.
What's that, Radiohead?
Oh, yeah. No, sorry, Sir Paul. I'll be right back with you in a minute. Just some fucking guys wanting to talk to
I got
me.
back at the door. What about Clockwork Orange?
Well, you know that part in Clockwork Orange where where Alex comes back out after the treatment and he runs into his old droogs.
Oh, yeah.
And they're cops now.
Yeah.
And the particularly sadistic one, Dim, when he looks up and sees Dim in a cop uniform, Dim goes, well. That is what I like to picture happen.
Oh, I was picturing a different scene from Clockwork Orange. I was picturing Radiohead in the form of Alex going back home, only to find out that Nigel has rented out their room. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, we can't just kick Paul McCartney out, can we, son? I mean, I do wonder. I do wonder, in all seriousness, if Nigel, I won't retell the whole narrative, but based on the context clues of what people have said about what they think kept Hail to the Thief from being maybe a more perfectly realized vision than other albums of theirs, there was talk, at least from Ed specifically, and I think kind of the band in general, definitely from Nigel, that he didn't have the voice that he would like to have had in those sessions. I do kind of wonder if Nigel came into this album with more leverage, like kind of like, hey, like, of course I want to produce your first album in 4 years, but we're going to kind of do shit my way.
Like George Martin's one condition in going back to record Abbey Road. Right.
Okay.
Remember? So George Martin.
Oh, because he didn't like the Get Back project.
No, and he said there. The one condition is we'll do it my way. And this is the amazing thing about the greats like George Martin and like a Nigel Godrich is their way doesn't mean my album. Maybe it means coaching. Because it's Nigel can play instruments very well, just like George Martin. George Martin was a phenomenal piano player. So typically producers do understand more than just production. They can get their hands dirty with the instrument.
Unless they're Rick Rubin.
Oh, man, he's taking it right. I was thinking that one. So unless they're a big asshole. But but yeah, and I mean, we don't know the nitty gritty beyond that, but I do think that, men and women that are these great producers, the way they produce is not being a dictator, because they're ultimately not the conduit with which the music is funneled through. So maybe it is elevating Johnny, maybe it is elevating Phil, maybe it is elevating Colin or Ed, and certainly Tom, but we don't, or at least I don't know, what took place in the sessions beyond that. But it's okay to speculate on this, because, I think it'll benefit. It can benefit folks in their own life of like, what does it mean to be in charge and collaborate, and I really think that the product speaks for itself, because like you were invoking Hail to the Thief, I do think that some of my favorite tracks off that album do have that live sound that we maybe hadn't heard. Certainly not with the preceding 2 albums, right? I might be wrong aside, and all that, and just to pause quickly on that, the reason why Kid A and Amnesiac represent such a high point for me is because of the way those songs opened up live. You don't really get that with Hail to the Thief so much, because they have that more live sound. So the result can be really positive as well. But I just think that you hear a very, very, very I'm going to not say exponential, but a substantial increase in the quality of production without being overproduced on In Rainbows.
Yeah, absolutely. We'll get more into that as we listen to it, but I know this sounds like a very generic statement, but I mean it in
this is a great album.
Yeah, well, I mean this in an attempt at specificity. This album sounds incredible.
Yes.
I listened to it one more time, squeezed one more listen of In Rainbows in before Zach came over to record today, and I just was marveling at every single sound. Every singular sound on this album is so rich.
Yeah.
And the tone of every instrument is just so precise and gorgeous and perfectly fitting every song. Before we move off of the sessions themselves, should I go over some of the details of like where and when they recorded stuff?
Yeah, absolutely.
So that's the background of them getting to Nigel. Once Nigel comes in, things really kick off in earnest. In October of 2006, he moves the band to a derelict country house called Tottenham House, which Nigel described as looking like a evil mansion from Scooby-Doo. And he also, this was interesting, maybe somebody of our listeners who have a little more insight into production could give us some details about this, but I guess they had all these different rhythm tracks that they were tinkering around with, and he took the rhythm tracks from all the songs they were messing with and transferred it onto one track and was like, you're done messing with that. Now you got to build the song.
Wow.
And so they couldn't further alter them. And Colin Greenwood described this was to make us commit to something. Mm-hmm. And so in this first house, they record Jigsaw Falling Into Place and Body Snatchers. So two of the more rockin' songs on the album. I feel like you can kind of feel what the mood was.
Yes.
Then a couple months later in December, they moved to another manor in England called the Haswell House, and they record Videotape and Nude. Mm-hmm. Another kind of companion tracks on the album, I think. Very slow, moody songs. Mm-hmm. And then from January to June, they're back in their Oxfordshire studio. They record the rest of the album. As we said, it ends up being 16 songs, which they cut to 10.
Yeah, and I mean, man, just I'm banking some observations based on what you just told me, but we'll save those for as we're listening. But the thing that I love that I had read a little bit about too is, first of all, one word for Nigel there, genius, right? And we bandy about that term so much, but like he understands these guys and how they work and how to get the best out of them, right? They're already at what I believe to be this apex of talent, right? Tom's solo album, I believe to be a work of genius. Johnny Greenwood is collaborating with P.T. Anderson at this time, right? So really, really highbrow stuff. But in summary, I believe he took them out of where they were locationally or shuffled them around. And Nigel really knows how to get these guys out of their heads, which is, I think, what you need collaborating both ways. It sounds like Nigel doesn't really have that problem so much. And I don't think it's just Tom York. I think he's the leader of the band, and he does seem to have that, I don't want to call it a problem, but that tendency. And I really feel like there's a psychological component that Nigel has to really get the best out of these guys, like a George Martin, and maybe this will be the only Stanley Kubrick, but like a Stanley Kubrick, just these people.
I have at least one Kubrick reference planned for later, so there will be two.
Excellent. Okay. But yeah, I think that's just somebody who's in charge, who doesn't behave as a dictator, and knows how to get the best out of folks, and that is an art form in itself. Without being a manipulator, unlike Stanley Kubrick. And maybe Nigel was, but, I don't know.
I mean, even if you just have somebody who you trust in the room to say, that's good, as in, that's done, or that one ain't done.
Yeah.
Just somebody, because, man, everybody knows who's done anything creative. You try something a few times, and eventually you go, what the hell am I looking at?
Yep.
So just that outside voice that is an outside voice of authority that knows what it's talking about is incredibly helpful, I imagine.
Absolutely. So can we
What's the other big thing about this album,
here's the other big thing, and this is going to be, I think, just something that can't help but come up maybe in other areas, but we do need to tick this off the list. So Radiohead, they were unsigned, they were uncertain how they were going to or who they were going to release this album through.
Unsigned and uncertain. That was almost what they called this album.
But the story of how this idea came about is covered extensively, even down to who said what, and it was not a member of Radiohead, by the way. It was one of the original two gentlemen who discovered the Manic Hedgehog EP. They are still in Radiohead's inner circle when they're recording. They were part of a band that did not do well but got signed, and one of them discovered Radiohead. So they're still in the circle, and both of them are stoners. Okay. And one of them said in the many, many, many discussions, I think this is one of the few areas where it did get heated between the band and Nigel trying to figure out what to do, said, why don't you just give it away? And that is not the pay what you want idea, but that was the catalyst that sparked the fire. And
that's very good background that I did not know. I read that it came from like management, which was interesting.
Yeah.
But why don't you just, in case somebody is finding out for the first time how this album was rolled out, can you talk about the pay what you want that the band ends up going with?
Okay, so just to back up, I said I was a little fuzzy on the details. So there was a band called Aerial FX that were sort of in response to like Joy Division in 1980 that they were signed from Oxfordshire. The two members of that band were Chris Hufford and Bryce Edge. There were probably more members, but that sort of they still stayed in business together. So like I mentioned, they were one of the bands that got Radiohead kind of in the door from their Manic Hedgehog EP. And they were one of the owners too of where Radiohead recorded Thinking About You and I Can't, because they had bought like a broken down building that they sort of retrofitted to be a studio in 1991. So Hufford and Edge have not been as publicly associated with Radiohead as other manager band combinations like Paul McGuinness to U2 or Jefferson Holt to REM. But they were, like I said, were the catalyst to
who's that son of a bitch who like was Bob Dylan and the Rolling Stones manager?
Oh, I'm not sure.
Well, anyway.
Son of a bitch, though.
I didn't mean to interrupt you.
No, that's okay.
You see him like really pushing some people around in Gimme Shelter.
Oh man.
Yeah. Sorry about that.
No, that's okay. I'm just looking for my pay what you want quote though, so it's okay.
Because I think he's the guy I think he might also be the same guy that the Beatles. Yeah, it's Alan Klein.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, the guy that was the argument about having him versus Linda McCartney's dad was a key component in the Beatles breaking up.
Yeah, so talking about
notorious bastard.
Yeah, absolutely. So talking about Hufford and Edge and how instrumental they were in this. So this is a direct quote from This Isn't Happening. He said, "It occurred during the tediously slow gestation of In Rainbows when the band's managers had little to do but get high and hatch harebrained semi-socialist business schemes. One day, they were stoned and ruminating over the fact that every Radiohead album since Kid A had leaked. What if they posted the next Radiohead LP, assuming the band eventually finished the damn thing themselves as a download? After all, they were technically free agents now, so they certainly could do whatever they wanted. Why not this? Eventually, Radiohead would put out In Rainbows in an unprecedented fashion, at least for a band as rich and famous as they were, making it available for whatever fans were willing to pay. Gone, it seemed, was all of the usual machinery that accompanied the release of a big-time rock record. There was no extensive pre-release promotional campaign, no marketing tie-ins with big box retailers. Just to put a pin in that, I love that, and I think that's what has part of the authenticity of not only Radiohead, but this album specifically Endure. Going back to this quote, or anything else that was traditionally implemented to turn out rock and roll hype. And to your question, Walker, too, this was only a week before the release, I believe. They announced it a week before that it was going to be pay what you want. And just final quote from this book here, too. As far as what the result of that was, about 2 out of 5 people who downloaded the album during the first month paid for it. And that's not counting the millions of people who just downloaded it illegally elsewhere. But the people who did pay contributed an average of $6 per album. And when you factor in the freeloaders, that was $2.26 per record, which was more than Radiohead would have likely made had they stayed with their record label EMI. And I want to take a breath there and let you...
No, I'm really glad that you had that pulled up because it just explains it so clearly. That's like, as legendary as the album itself is, that this really was a huge turning point in the business model for bands. And I was thinking even that Bandcamp seems to be where most working band, and I say working bands meaning that's their career, but maybe don't have international acclaim.
Friend of the show, Aaron Ross, mentioned that this tied in nicely with his use of Bandcamp.
Yeah, and Bandcamp is that's a huge part of the business model. Is you basically seek a donation of pay me what you think it's worth to you to get this music. You can put a minimum price on it, but a lot of people don't. And I think we'll talk more about like the impact that this strategy had, but you already did note it ended up being extremely successful for the band. And I saw a quote from Johnny Greenwood, which is a rarity in itself to get a quote from Johnny. And he compared the strategy to the legend of King Canute, which is the legend that is depicted on the cover of The Eraser, Tom York's album, a king trying to control the ocean, and he's eventually swallowed by the waves. And he was using that as a metaphor for the internet. And just saying, they leak all our stuff anyway. The quote is, you can't pretend the flood isn't happening. Yeah. So Radiohead...
This is really happening.
Yeah. Thank God that you got a Radiohead quote in there. Radiohead know when they hear a good idea.
Yes.
And they seem to get wise to the fact that if we want this to have an impact, we're going to need to do something different. And it's great because it's kind of an embrace of the fact that everyone is stealing music that ends up making them a lot richer in the process. Well, and also 80% of folks who bought a digital copy or received for free a digital copy ended up buying a physical copy. Yeah. So I also feel like Radiohead bet on their fans, and that it's like these are the kind of people who are going to want the physical artifact as well.
Yes. And just to, that can't be understated how important that is. But just to evoke a previous guest, Kailani Glenn, my wife, when she said in her episode that she was a guest on Create the Internet That You Want to Be On, I feel like that's something that we really resonated with us at the time, and also I think can be applied to this. Like Radiohead, always a band that I think really embraced, the new use of technologies. Just keeping the online diary, right? Like in the Kid A era, and so there's that to it, right? And also, too, just the flexibility to pivot, right? Like I just read from that quote that it was maybe, folks who are in the room, in the circle, who casually said, why don't you just give it away? And that was the catalyst to coming up with this very tide-turning idea, right? But like that shows a lot of the ability to be nimble, right, on their part. And I don't want to turn this into like use a bunch of sales buzzwords, but like it, nimble, agility, whatever. Like that, the fact that they kind of casually came up with this idea. Here's my second Kubrick evocation. There's, you know, in the documentary The Shining, which is one of his only films where there's footage during the making of, that iconic shot of underneath Jack when he's pushing on the freezer door. I mean, and you know, just every shot in that film is iconic of Jack. But one of the more iconic moments, it shows him crafting that shot and just going, oh, let's just do it under here, Jack. Oh, it was a great take, Jack. And you know, it just goes to show you, like, oh, brilliance comes in many, many forms.
Right.
The overarching narrative, I think, with creators like a Radiohead or like a Kubrick, you know, are that there is this very meticulous, methodical approach. Okay, fine. But that doesn't then mean that you lose your ability to pivot and be nimble in the moment, which I think is just a great life lesson for all of us, right? We get so focused on what our vision and goals are to achieve. You know, I want to have well-behaved children that contribute to society. I want to, but you have to be able to pivot with these curveballs. And yeah, and I think that that's what Radiohead did, which, by the way, you know, we imbue it with all this brilliance, and it absolutely was brilliant. But you know, and it was driven by a democratic ethic. But as you just said, Radiohead, or maybe I just said, Radiohead did reap a substantial more reward, very much well-deserved, by the way. And they didn't take it with that approach. And of course, you have to factor in the laws of economic reality, even if you have a more democratic ethic in some capacity, if you want to live. I don't want to go too hard on that point because that's probably debatable. But oftentimes you have to take risks. And I think those are the ones that pay off in a literal and figurative way. And final little bit on this, like in the book that I was quoting from directly, he takes a different angle that Radiohead thought it would be more revolutionary than it was. And fans like Walker and I maybe imbue it with a little bit more of a tide turning, like momentous moment than it actually was, because streamers dominate the world. And I disagree with him on that, because yes, Spotify has sort of just made things the same a little bit. But when I think of Radiohead and when I think of friend of the show, Aaron Ross, right, two totally different levels of fame, I do think I'm more inclined to pay for stuff and support the artist than I would have been there otherwise. And that is an intangible. You know, the net effect of my couple dollars, or, you know, $10, $20, whatever it is that I pay. Yeah, that's not going to make somebody famous or change, you know, but that's huge. And I wonder how many other people there are like me who consider how much money they have before they donate, but I am more inclined to do so. I don't know. What are your thoughts on that, Walker?
I agree with that. I mean, I do think that, well, you know what? This move was not received with zero criticism, and not just from blood-sucking executives at the top of, you know, record labels.
Right.
I saw a quote from Kim Gordon of Sonic Youth, and she was like, yeah, it's cool, but Radiohead is setting a precedent that bands that don't have the
are they operating from a place of privilege?
Yeah, basically,
right?
like, it's like Radiohead, basically, she was saying, are doing this because they're in a position to do it, but the rest of us don't have the comfortable position of giving away our music for free, nor do we have the fan bases to make that a sustainable business model. And, you know, I get that.
Which is often a critique of any socialist-ish move, right?
I think so. I mean, I think that it's still like a capitalistic act.
Yes.
I mean, you know, they got paid really, really well for this business strategy, and it was a business strategy. It also is cool to be able to do something that isn't in line with their politics. And by that, I just mean undercutting the record business.
Yeah.
You know, they didn't like it. They didn't want to keep working with EMI. And there was a quote I found from Tom where he's like, we didn't do it to fuck over the record company, but there is a perverse thrill in doing that. And the idea that people can pay what they want, I do think is a somewhat revolutionary act in this society. I don't want to overstate it, but they still got paid. But no one was turned away for lack of funds.
Right.
And that is not what was happening in music at that time. You could either get it illegally or you could cough up some money. Now, I was one of the people who was dead broke at that time. I did not pay for my digital copy, and I did not buy a physical copy until many years later. It still, it created a lifelong Radiohead customer.
Exactly.
You know?
That's what I was going to ask you. So no longer being dead broke, do you think that influenced your desire to want to, I mean, obviously their merch is cool and all that stuff, but as you've mentioned several times, you have their entire vinyl discography, right? Or on vinyl. You have their entire discography on vinyl. Do you think, there's no way to prove it, but I mean, I would think that it influenced your desire to want to support them monetarily going forward.
I think it influenced my desire to want to support things that I think are quality in general.
Absolutely.
You know, I like free shit as much as the next person. I stream a lot of music. We've talked about this, I feel like, a few times on this podcast. Streaming music is a double-edged sword for me. I hear a ton of music that I would not have heard otherwise. I get into artists that I do continue to follow their career, but a lot of stuff I stream once and never think about again for the rest of my life. And that's going to happen sometimes when you buy an album, but really before you buy an album in that era, it's like, should CDs have been $18? No, that should not have been the case at any point.
Totally.
But you sure thought about, do I want this album if it's the one I can buy this month? And yeah, I mean, even like the Patreon business model, I think is cool, where I listen to a few podcasts where I'm just like, wow, these people have given me hundreds of hours of content for free. I've really enjoyed it. I've laughed my ass off, or I've learned a lot, whatever the case may be. And now there's a show on Wednesday, and if I pay $5 a month, they can make this sustainable and continue to make this stuff that I'm enjoying. Yeah, I'm going to go ahead and do that.
Yeah.
You know, and I'm not saying Radiohead invented that, but I do think that this album was clearly a hinge point in things going to that business. The
pay what you want.
Pay what you want. It's Radiohead invented OnlyFans.
Right.
Is what I'm saying.
Well, and just to give a little bit of duality to kind of what we're talking about, because, you know, we're being very positive on potentially the long-term monetary benefit to creators like Radiohead and maybe just the influence that it had. But I just want to give a little bit of the other side of the coin. So, author Stephen Hayden in his book This Isn't Happening, I'm picking up kind of mid-paragraph, but he said, why wouldn't bands of Radiohead's stature now exist as independent nation states in the rock world, performing on an arena-based scale while operating essentially as a mom-and-pop business? It didn't work out that way, of course. The same month In Rainbows came out, in October 2007, a new company launched in Sweden, Spotify. With Kid A, it was unclear for a while whether Radiohead had made the first album of the 21st century or the last album of the 20th. But the advent of Spotify made it abundantly obvious that In Rainbows was not the beginning of a new dawn for how rock bands and audiences would interact, but rather the end of the era in which a single rock album could act as a focal point for the entire online world. And I just think that's really well said, because, you know, we just went on and on about like how, you know, positive the influence was, and maybe those are dollars that can't quite be measured. You know, the fact that it came out 15 years ago, but you were saying it's created a lifelong customer, it's kind of hard to probably reconcile that revenue.
Sure.
So I think he's on to something, right? We don't want to get too much into how, you know, changing it was, because Radiohead's catalog is on Spotify now, and they fought that, by the way, for years. It was until 2013. They were one of the last holdouts. So I don't have too much more to say on it, other than I think the impact of it can't be overstated. Maybe it could, but I don't think we've overstated it.
I mean, I think that what he's saying is similar to the point that Kim Gordon was making, and from a different perspective. I mean, she's kind of saying like, hey, this kind of affects the bottom line of your contemporaries. Yeah. You know, you doing this. It's a little bit like, you're making us look like jerks, Radiohead.
Right.
We're not all in a position to do this. I think that he's right. It didn't invent a new sustainable model for artists.
No.
But I think that the band was in a position to do this, and it's cool that they did, and it did further undercut the dying music business model as it existed at that time.
Absolutely. And EMI's response to this, because they were, I would just say, understandably pissed. They what they did with that feeling is not what I think they should have done, which was around the Christmas holiday in 2008, because they owned Radiohead's entire back catalog. Because just to interrupt myself, Radiohead was in talks to produce this with EMI and release it. Those discussions eventually did break up. So they put out a best of Radiohead that has some Radiohead-ish art looking on the front of it. I was actually a consumer of this product as I was just getting into the band around that time. But this really was something that the band was very angry about, to the extent that Tom York gave an interview about it, was very upset. And I feel like, judging by the look on your face, you have a little bit of insight into that.
I do. Well, first of all, everything you just said is completely accurate.
Great.
EMI, it's really funny because
I'll take Radiohead for 1,000, Alex.
Yeah. EMI, though, basically had it's impossible to know what happened behind closed doors, but the impression I got was they very much were of a cocky mindset that they were going to convince Radiohead to sign to a new contract and eventually didn't. EMI claimed that was all about greedy money disputes, that the band was demanding an exorbitant amount of money that was not feasible for them. Radiohead vehemently denied that. Who knows? I'm sure they wanted to get paid. And I also could see them as a negotiating tactic. Being
pricing
like,
themselves out?
Yeah, we're going to throw out a number that they won't do.
Yes.
But I think that it did... Tom definitely got prickly about that being said about
They
him
wanted
in the
shillings
press.
and loads per song.
Yeah, it's like they said I demanded 10 quid. But EMI very much had the energy to me of like a jilted boyfriend who behind the scenes was like begging a woman not to break up with them, and then when she did, like he's like going to his bros like, yeah, I dumped that bitch, like, because they were very much like, good luck. We don't miss you at all. And we actually own your entire back catalog. So we're going to put out an unauthorized box set.
Not sure if you're aware, Radiohead, but Hail to the Thief only got an 87.
Yeah. Yeah. A bit of a bloom's come off the rose, hasn't it? Now, EMI was owned by... There was a new head of EMI at this point.
Oh.
And I bring this up because the head of EMI has been an occasional... I don't think we've heard from him in a while, but he was a character in some of the early Idiotalk episodes.
That we casually named Tom Bombadil.
Well, this head of EMI's name is Guy Hands.
Wow.
Now, I would like to call him Mr. Hands. This guy is the new definitive Mr. Hands. Listeners, if you're laughing at that, you know what I'm referencing. If you don't know what I'm referencing, do not Google Mr. Hands unless you want to see a video of a man being made love to by a horse.
Did not know that.
And Mr. Hands, I am sorry to tell you this, Zach, he did pass away from his injuries.
Oh, no. Poor guy.
Yeah.
Poor guy.
Poor guy. Yeah. Poor guy. If only he had just not done that.
So it was willingly participating in the lovemaking.
Yes.
Okay. I guess horses don't rape people. Huh? Yeah.
I don't think so.
He must be stopped. This horse.
Yeah. Oh my God. No, this man decided to let a horse have sex with him, and it turned out his little heart just couldn't take it.
Yeah.
So
Guy Hands.
So
Getting
Guy
handsy.
Hands. Now I'm about to show you a picture. And I have to tell you, even though this was a different head of EMI than the head of EMI that we talked about before, this is exactly what I pictured.
Can I conjure up an image real quick? Okay.
Okay. And now I'm turning my laptop over.
Wow.
Is that not exactly what you pictured?
I pictured a little younger. Gosh, why did they go with somebody who's 806 years old?
Yes, and he was from a...
This guy's in touch,
He
isn't
also had no background in the music business. It was a...
an outside...
like private equity firm. You probably know what that means, but to me it just means one of those corporations that just like gambles with billions of dollars.
It's like when Steve Jobs went out, Apple hired a gentleman from PepsiCo, and it's like, I'm sure to run Pepsi, yes, you're an adept business person. Those are not the same things. Apple is not literally a fruit.
Yeah.
So what a bad move.
So once they do this, he's really clashing in the press with Radiohead, Mr. Hands is, and he's out there going like, Radiohead begged us to take them back, didn't they? This is an actual quote that he says. I'm going to read it in the head of EMI voice. He says, They wanted a lot of money. They wanted their masters back, which we valued even more. At our valuation.
Which he did do that.
Yeah, that's part of the quote.
Very old.
At our evaluation, it was millions and millions they wanted. And then responding to that, Tom York said, and I won't do a voice here, he says, it fucking pissed me off. We could have taken them to court. The idea we were after so much money was stretching the truth to a breaking point. That was his PR company briefing against us, and I'll tell you what, it ruined my fucking Christmas.
Yes, I saw that quote as well. I did not know it was in response to this old bloke, which I think, not to linger on this point too much, but obviously this was a dying industry in the model that it existed then. Why go with somebody so out of touch? I mean, same thing goes for the politicians we elect. Right. I don't want to linger on it too much, but it is just not to judge somebody by their picture. I don't know about anything about this person's character. If I were, I would say it doesn't look high based on how he looks.
No, he looks like
looks like a blood-sucking
billionaire. Yeah.
Yes.
He looks like he's pissed off that anybody has money that isn't his. Yeah, I mean, do you have anything else you want to say about Pay What You Want?
No, I don't. I think that I'm sure it'll come up again. I do want to get into our sort of, independent background and overall relationship and kinship to this album. But before we do, if I could take a quick In Rainbows to the Bathroom, that would be great.
Yeah, that'd be great.
Okay,
Let's take
thank
5. You. So, yeah, I mean, gosh, it's just like a really kind of rich time in the band's history before, and we haven't even listened to a song yet.
No, but I mean, it's just like...
I hope this album's good after all this.
Well, I wanted to, really just, like you said, it's such a rich history in the time of the band, and just, In Rainbows is so incredible, culturally, I think, for folks that, like you said in our last episode, it's pretty much a given if folks are listening to this podcast that there's some interest in Radiohead, but I don't think it's a stretch to say that it represents like a really critical pivot, right? As far as when it was released, how it was released, and for the band, who do have a large and longstanding cultural impact. But like I said, right, before we took our break, I really wanted to hear you describe, your overall relationship to this album, whether that's memories and where you heard it, whatever, how as specific as you want to go. But you've been really gracious and kind of asking me, about my journey to each one. But as we've alluded to, and I have a very distinct memory of Walker playing me this album. And so I thought we could go a little bit further back and just kind of talk about your, inception into this album and into the band.
Sure. Well, I mean, it's at least partially been covered on the show before, but I don't mind going back into it because now our listeners have a little more context for how I got into this album because he has been a guest on the show.
Yeah.
Former guest and good friend of mine, Jesse Rimler, burned this album for me. Mm-hmm. I have, how it is with memory where it's like a lot of different things might get boiled down into one kind of scene in your mind. But Zach remembers the house I lived at the time. It was a house in South Berkeley, right on the Oakland-Berkeley border. And it was, I won't call it a punk house. Because that's not accurate. And that usually brings to mind kind of like a squat or something. Mm-hmm. It was a normal house that I lived in with my girlfriend at the time and multiple roommates, at least one of whom is a close friend to this day, and many very impactful people in my life.
Huge Radiohead fan too, right?
Yeah, absolutely, yeah. And hopefully future guest of the show. Mm-hmm. We won't name him now just because we don't want his fans to come out and just been like, when's the blank episode coming out?
We'll nickname him JV Football.
There you go. I like it. Yeah. He didn't have the makings of a varsity athlete, though. That's a little Easter egg for the Sopranos heads out there. But yeah, so lived in this house at the time in South Berkeley that was colloquially known as Fort Oregon because it was on Oregon Street, and it was a music house. It was like there was a basement, which is very rare in California to have a basement at all. And that basement was used as a practice space by guest Jesse Rimler's band, Kapowski.
Great band name.
Yeah, great band name.
Great band.
Saved by the Bell. Great band. And before myself or any of the roommates that I lived with lived there, the basement was used as a venue to put on shows. And so we continued that. The house was also known as the TV house because a previous resident had covered the outside. There was a big brick facade outside. It was not a brick house, but the house stood at the top of a large brick stairway. And there was all these, levels leading up to the house. Levels, Jerry. There was like multiple plateaus as you walked up to the house, and every surface on the stairway and these kind of flat flower bed areas and the roof of the house was covered in old broken TVs. And
it was really cool.
It was really cool. So it had a very like cool effect. And yeah, the house just had a lot of character. That's where I was living at the time. I look back on it as like the brief moment of my life when I was like kind of cool and around a lot of cool stuff, because it was just a time that I recall as very rich with fun parties, great music, and just kind of like cool arty friends that were all very new to me and turning me on to lots of new stuff. And Jesse was one of those people. We connected on some shared musical interests, and one of them for me was enough Radiohead that I remember being excited for this album to come out. And the memory that I was trying to pull was I just have a memory of like a very sunny day standing out in front of that house and Jesse handing me the burnt CD with In Rainbows written on it with a red Sharpie,
which I can still picture in my mind.
You can picture that CD.
Yeah, I mean, a lot of what we're going to talk about, like I think you just said very, very well that like, how memory is, and sometimes we'll say I distinctly remember, and we may even believe that, but I really do remember it.
Yeah, so that was the CD, and that was my copy of In Rainbows for a really long time, and that was what set me off on the journey of getting into, I guess, generally like the band's whole catalog, but I would say especially Kid A and Amnesiac as those kind of being the like, the point of the band's career that I had been intimidated by and never really checked out in earnest. That is when Zach is visiting and we're listening to it. It also, I have a memory of you, me, and Jason, a roommate in that house, all watching the webcast of what is known as the Scotch Mist sessions, which is live in-studio performances by Radiohead of all the songs on In Rainbows. And that I just like couldn't get enough Radiohead after that, and it's been ever since then that this band is very, very important to me. And for years I have always considered this my favorite Radiohead album. That as we delve more and more into the band, that is much harder to quantify for me.
Yeah,
but I will say that I love this album. To me, it sounds like Radiohead at their most comfortable. And I don't think they have another album that sounds quite like it.
I agree.
And I guess we'll get more into that too, because I feel like that is represented in the sound and the lyrics and just kind of the overall feel of the album. But that's not really what we're talking about. We're talking about my history with it, which is just that. It's that house. It's those friends. It's that time. And I guess that in October of 2010, right? Is that when it was released?
10/10/2007.
Sorry. Yes. Yeah. 10/10/2007. So in October of 2007, I was 21. And, that's a very good age to have your mind expanded by music that broadens your horizons and challenges you in ways that you haven't experienced before. And Radiohead, as we discussed a lot with Brad Osborne, or as is discussed in his book a lot, Radiohead are perfect for that because you don't have to forget everything you know about conventional rock and roll. In fact, it's that's the on-ramp to getting into Radiohead, but it's going to be different enough from what you expect that it is going to stick with you in a new way. And that's exactly what happened to me.
Yeah, man.
And it was because of this album.
You're honing in on so many good points, like that point of paraphrasing Brad's quote, and we'll go through that as we listen to the songs, because I have mentioned in, I think it was our Kid A episode, that there's not In Rainbows does not have a song that features a single chorus. Again, we'll move past that and we'll talk about it as we go through. I'll say this song has no chorus before each song. But no, I mean that can't be overstated enough, right? How much our brains are familiar with verse chorus, to the extent where a lot of times, even with guests we've had on the show, they don't follow like a traditional structure. I've heard both Aaron Ross and my wife Kailani Glenn say, and so that, like you said, it's the on ramp. I think you also said one really critical thing was just your age, which was 21. Again, I think my catchphrase of this podcast is can't be overstated. It can't be overstated enough how critical that is. Age is just a number. To an extent. But age is a number arbitrarily, right? 21 versus 22, so for different folks' brains progress at different rates. But for, what that means and how much it caught you and many, many other folks at that exact age. I was 18. That is different than 21. Is so important because I always get my generations mixed up, but there's Gen Z and then millennials, correct?
Yeah, we're millennials.
We're millennials, right? And so Gen Z was before us, right?
No, Gen Z is the next generation.
What's the generation before millennials?
Gen X.
Yeah, so Gen X typically favors Kid A.
Okay.
Typically. This is anecdotally speaking, but this is also pulling from the anecdotal observations of Rolling Stone journalist Stephen Hayden in this book. And he's very forthcoming that it's anecdotally speaking, but he just talks about the importance that Radiohead managed to straddle two generations in albums. I would argue maybe even three, but it's a toss-up between people choosing Kid A or OK Computer. But I don't know if you agree with this, Walker, but I would say folks tend to choose Kid A as their album, right? And a lot of that has to do with the fact that they listened to it leaked online beforehand, right? And like this ushering in and preceding 9/11, but being somehow tied in with it. Well, look at In Rainbows. A lot of folks that a lot of 21-year-olds that I'm sure Kid A spoke to, that's why it's their album, right? They have all these memories associated to it. Well, what was going on in the world in Rainbows? President Bush was in the end of his term. Obama in the zeitgeist was starting to get momentum as being the candidate that was going to, he'd have to defeat Bush, but that was going to turn the tide.
Well, first he had to defeat Hillary.
Exactly, right, because Bush was an incumbent, and, so, but it wasn't a slam dunk, obviously, that there wasn't going to be another, anyways, listeners know your history. But that was a very, very, very momentous moment in American history. And I don't think that's overstating to say so. The pay what you want model, we just covered in exhaustive detail. But the fact that Radiohead was able to speak to two very, very different generations, and I think In Rainbows, in the same way Kid A does, literally feels like it belongs to the people that were able to do it, right? Because some people were able to obtain it for free in a totally legal and free manner, right? Same with Kid A, and that's just so interesting. The fact that Radiohead were one of the last rock bands to headline Coachella, that might be a little bit of reductive to the bands that do headline Coachella, but like it's just incredible.
Yeah.
And they weren't quite an old man band yet, right? They weren't, kind of in the same way that Jeff Tweedy is like this awesome old man rock star. I don't know the age range, in comparison, but like they were potentially getting your late 30s and early 40s. You tend to be reaching that stage of more like legacy act.
Yeah.
Whereas this album is comprised of songs, I would argue 8 out of 10 of them are go-tos for them to play live. That's incredible.
Yeah.
And just, sorry, go ahead.
No, not at all. I wasn't really waiting to jump in. I think that's a really good point. I think that the thing about rock being maybe a little more of an older interest now, I do wonder about this, and I'm not of one mind about it because I get into new guitar music on a fairly regular basis. So I know people are still out there making it. I do kind of think using something like Coachella as an indicator, like you're saying, I think if you look at those lineups over the last 10 years, you do kind of come to a general conclusion of like, okay, that's guitar, drum, bass music is not what the kids are super listening to these days. And it makes me kind of wonder if rock is something that is now more of a niche art form like jazz or something, where it's like it's always being made. There's always people who are into it. Like the guitar's not going anywhere, but you have to just seek it out a little more. And I wonder that. And then the rock stars, so to speak, your Jeff Tweedies or your Tom Yorks or whatever, who have had the kind of longevity that they're still around. The 90s was a really, really, really huge time for rock and roll. And so if you have sustained a career from then, you are just an older person now. That's just how it's going to be. Right. So it is easy to like, I don't know. But then again, then a band like Turnstile comes out, which is all like 20-year-olds and all their fans seem hella young.
Right.
And they're doing like hardcore. And it's like resonating with like a huge mainstream audience. So maybe I can take everything and shove it.
Please don't. Because I think the challenge with rock in comparison to something like jazz, even though I think that's a great comparison, it's saying that I think rock has a more flexible definition than something like jazz does.
Sure.
And so I think that when we look back on what we define as like a golden era of rock or a great time to be a rock star, like the 90s, like the 70s, you know, I do think of somebody like Chris Cornell or Eddie Vedder or Kurt Cobain or a Tom York, right? Even though those gentlemen are all, or Courtney Love or, you know, whomever. I'm sorry.
Or Billy Corgan, but just his new stuff.
Exactly.
Just his appearances on Alex Jones.
Oh, God, kill me. I love those albums so much.
I know.
But
people can be, you know, good at something and bad at other things.
Absolutely. Yes. Well said. But you know, Machine Gun Kelly is somebody that people would think of as like the one of the leaders of rock now. And unfortunately, I haven't listened to a lot of his music. It is not my style. But I think what is undeniable is that he is a rock star, right? He's not a pop rock star. And to me, that doesn't line up with my perception, but I think that shows that maybe I'm getting a little bit older, Walker. Sure. Doesn't mean that I'm right and everyone else is wrong. Because how many folks whose heyday was in the 70s rejected Kurt Cobain? So it is an evolving thing, right? But just to kind of go back just a couple steps, because I really wanted to hear about sort of your journey within Rainbows and all that. But I just wanted to say, kind of dovetailing on that, I think, you know, when I've been thinking about how to study for In Rainbows and how to bring, you know, not necessarily something fresh or whatever, it doesn't have to be as empirically researched as maybe other episodes. I was really struggling, and you know, to kind of put myself in the mood and in the right vibe, I turned on the film Bottle Rocket. And that is just a movie that is so great. Walker and I love so much, and I just brought out all the comforts. Right,
we're delving into Zach's favorite things type of a thing.
Yeah, and also the reason why I mentioned Bottle Rocket is because that is a film. Primarily, I mean, Owen Wilson and Wes Anderson wrote it, but it is a brothers movie, right? And I mean, and it's just, I could go on and on about that movie. I didn't mean to shoehorn this in too much, but yeah, I got out a share-size bag of M&Ms, didn't share any of them with anybody.
Kai reached for an M&M at one point, and Zach smacked her hand away
with an electric fly swatter. And yeah, and I all I was doing, you know, because this was last night, was just putting my notes onto paper, or you know, the parts I had highlighted onto paper. Because, you know, when Walker talking about that Jesse had shown it to him, I've mentioned several times, Walker showed it to me. There was this fire and intensity in his eyes. Well, Walker was 21. I was 18. You mentioned that this was sort of your second, like, rebirth into music, right? Because maybe when you had been 18 was like the Elliott Smith discovery.
Sure. Yeah.
21. And these are critical points, right? So I mentioned, can't remember what episode, but that this was a stage where I had started to reject a lot of the music that I grew up with in that high school era, right? Not dropped all of it, but like the bands that were making music at that time, the Avenged Sevenfolds, right? The AFIs. But I hadn't found anything to replace it with. And Radiohead don't represent a replacement, but they represent this first rebirth for me, right? And you know, I wasn't immediately I knew when Walker played me Body Snatchers and I think 15 Step, that visit where he had the red pen Sharpie burned CD, my senses were just, you know, intrigued, right? But because it was my first rebirth, this did lead me to go backwards and start at their discography. And I think it's very interesting how highly this ranks for you, which by the way, it does for me as well. But it who knows subconsciously if it was like, I need to relate to my older brother and have him take me seriously. I can't prove that it doesn't. I think it's very clear that I love this band on my own. But I think what's so interesting is that it forced me to kind of go backwards over the period of a year, start with Pablo Honey. I do believe I went in sequence. But as we've talked about, what I've gravitated towards the most when kind of finding my own Radiohead fanship was Hail to the Thief and Amnesiac. So very different kind of journeys all under the Radiohead banner, right? It's not that crazy or anything. But I do think that In Rainbows represents this sort of like also rebirth for our relationship. Like, I mean, the 18 and 21 are very different stages in life, but I remember following you, showing me this. I did my first visit to the Bay, when you lived down there. And it really became this just like thing for us to kind of like get excited about together.
Yeah.
And my second...
Listeners can't see, but I have a big smile on my face at what Zach's describing right now. Because that was like a very close time for us, even though it was like... we didn't live in the same city and, after growing up. But I feel like that was like our first finding each other as adults, albeit very young ones.
Yeah.
But we were close growing up, but it's also like, it was almost more like, we're in the same prison gang because we have been forced to share this room for our entire lives.
Yeah. and
this was like, we're hanging out voluntarily.
Yes, and to be visiting you where the gentlemen you mentioned were and are very cool people. Were quite a bit older than me. I think maybe JV football was a little bit older than even you. So represented like, these are cool people that I'm hanging
and Zach,
around.
I don't mind telling you, he's still older than me.
But it was so cool that when we were watching Scotch Mist that I was just so enamored. And those people have always been so kind to me. I never felt like treated like a young brother or anything like that. But it just, like you summed it up. I don't think I needed to elaborate anymore. It represented this rebirth. And the second one that you were talking about that this represented for you, mine came in right around the same age of 21 to 22 again, when I was in college. And it was for, maybe a little bit more kind of weirder music. I've talked about the band Mars Volta and Pinback. I did discover them on my own when I was about 22. We can argue the merits of how good those bands are in some other podcasts, but they were a very weird thing for me to get into. So I had that too later in life, but it is just, and that's why I brought up Bottle Rocket, because, the dynamic of brothers and the closeness is so intangible and awesome to watch in that. And that's why I think even subconsciously I was like, I'm going to craft my comfort zone so that I could really immerse myself into like what I think this album represents for me. It was cool.
Yeah, that's gorgeous, man. I mean, it's really like when you are just indulging, and I mean the royal you, when you're just indulging in like your favorite things, it's like, let's just like push this shit to the max. Like it's like I watch, Halloween, and then it's like, you know what? I'm going to watch every one of my favorite horror movies
and
now.
then you can get a little sick of it.
Yeah, exactly.
Just like with anything.
I do think that you really, really are keen in on just what is such a lucky thing for both of us. That it sounds like getting into this album really coincided with a time of self-discovery for each of us. And that's, I certainly know the band didn't plan it that way.
Right.
And that is just, there is nothing quite like the things that connect with you when you are in a position of carving out your own identity.
Yeah.
And sometimes you look back on those things and cringe, there's so much stuff from my life at that time or my behavior at that time that I look back and I go, oh my God, you try hard, Radiohead is one of the things that has continued to resonate through each stage of my life since the time of inception for me. But there's just something about you get imprinted on when it's like I'm right now choosing so many things about my life for the first time. I'm choosing my friends. I'm choosing my relationships, even within my family, right? You and me. It's like we're kind of like choosing what this dynamic is going to be now that we're not living under the same roof,
Yeah.
And then also and this is the soundtrack I'm choosing to go along with all that stuff. And I really think you do kind of never forget. They say you never forget your first, and I think that really applies here.
Well, and also like just why I think Radiohead have so much value. You know, you were talking about how like carving out your identity, that critical period. Radiohead have some would argue managed to do that per album, and I also think too why Radiohead do have some value for me. You know. Or not just for me, for a lot of people, is because and have so much artistic depth, is they have really been like a good catalyst or bridge to explore other other very well respected art forms and people that they're associated to, whether that's a political cause that maybe I'm like, okay, I'm gonna put aside my biases and maybe kind of Radiohead don't guide my politics, but I'm talking about specifically with climate change, right? And their connections to other art forms or artists that I think is really impactful would be like P.T. Anderson. Really, I don't think people have to get into P.T. Anderson, but really challenged my understanding of what makes a quote unquote good film. I think Walker and I might differ a little bit on our favorites. Mine is The Master, but is a very potentially cynical look at a lot of modern day religion.
I don't disagree with that. I mean, it's hard for me to pick my number one, but I've always said There Will Be Blood, but every time I watch The Master, I'm like, this thing is really sneaking
up. Is this their kid A?
Yeah.
Is this his kid A?
Yeah. The Master and There Will Be Blood are
okay and
are Kid A and In Rainbows, and then Boogie Nights is like OK Computer. Where it's like you don't get any of this shit without this stuff, which is just such good rock and roll wall to wall.
So I don't feel any mandate to like the things that Radiohead are associated to, but to me there is merit in trying to understand those things, and obviously lots of people understand that. But I just, like I said, I don't feel a requirement to like those things. Tom York and maybe some of his political causes, Johnny Greenwood and his association to probably, I think, the greatest working director, obviously just an opinion. So, you could carry that out very, very far. But I'm just so great. And when we mentioned Kubrick, too, just real quick note on that, Krzysztof Penderecki, the Polish composer, Johnny Greenwood does actually specifically borrow from some of his compositions for There Will Be Blood. So there's more, and Krzysztof Penderecki scored a lot of the songs on The Shining. So there's more than a tenuous connection there, I would say. And it's not because of Radiohead that I've then discovered and found a way into these other artistic statements, but I wouldn't say it's not associated. So
absolutely.
That's kind of my wrap up in gratitude of this album and what it represents.
Man, I love it. What if we put it on now and it's just like the suckiest thing anybody's ever heard? Wouldn't that be funny? You know what, dude? I'm actually looking at the amount of time we've been talking.
Oh, yeah. Where are we at?
Well, we've been talking for over an hour and a half.
Okay.
I'm kind of proposing. I've got if you have some idea what I'm talking about. That was a stretch. I'm trying to think. Is there any Radiohead lyrics about like making a deal or a proposition?
Well, I don't know. Don't get any big ideas. But
thank you. Well, listen, I go forward, you go backward, and soon we'll meet again on this idea, which is I'm thinking that we press pause here and make this a two-parter, and we go ahead and call this an episode.
Yeah.
We've given you as much of the history of In Rainbows as I feel like we can without now listening to the music and seeing how it matches up to what was going on with the band, both in its new business strategy and what they were doing creatively at the time. You know about Zach and I's personal connection with this album. We got to listen to the music, but that is going to be a big undertaking in itself. So what do you say that we come back and do that for our next episode?
Yeah, we've stripped ourselves nude to the listener, so I'm ready to do it.
Guys, if you could have seen the look of self-satisfaction on Zach's face as he said that, and you don't even know what he's talking about because you don't yet know that Nude is a song from In Rainbows, but you soon will. So we will see you next week where we go through In Rainbows track by track and keep talking about this album. Can they keep talking about this album? They've talked so much already. Yes, we can keep talking about this album until the end of time, and we may just do so. But thank you so much for listening, and we will see you next week when we come back and listen to In Rainbows.
Can't wait.
Bye. Idiotalk is a Glenn Brothers production get in touch with us at idiotalk.podcast@gmail.com or follow us on Instagram at idiotalk.podcast. And thanks for listening to